My fiancée told me she was working late. An hour later, her coworker accidentally posted a group photo with her sitting on his lap. I quietly saved it. That night, I forwarded it to HR. What happened next? Legendary. The text from my fiancée, Megan, came through at 7:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. "Hey babe, going to be super late tonight. We're all hands on deck trying to hit the quarterly deadline. Don't wait up for me, so." I was on the couch, reading a book. I texted back a simple, "No problem, work hard." An hour and a half later, I was scrolling through Instagram, killing time before bed. And that's when I saw it. It wasn't on her feed, of course. It was on the feed of a junior marketing guy from her department, a kid named Kevin, who was known for oversharing. He had posted a classic group photo, a blurry shot of about 10 people squeezed into a booth at some trendy downtown bar. The caption read, "Deadline crushed. Team celebration." And right in the middle of the happy celebrating team was Megan. She was laughing, holding a cocktail, and sitting squarely on the lap of her boss, a senior manager named Alex. His arm was wrapped securely around her waist, and his hand was resting a little too high on her side. They looked comfortable, familiar. Like this wasn't the first time they'd been in that position. I stared at the photo for a full minute. My heart didn't race. My stomach didn't drop. I felt a strange, almost serene sense of calm. The kind of calm you feel when a long, tedious investigation finally yields a single, perfect piece of incontrovertible evidence. The vague suspicion I had been harboring for months had just been confirmed with a timestamp and a geotag. I didn't get angry. I didn't throw my phone. I just held my thumb down on the screen and quietly saved the image to my camera roll. Then I saved it to my secure cloud server. Then I backed it up to an encrypted hard drive. In my world, you always protect your evidence. Megan thought she was at a team celebration. She had no idea she was the subject of a newly opened internal investigation. And I was about to become the most dedicated, most ruthless lead investigator she had ever encountered. Let's be very clear about something. I am not a wimp. I am not a doormat. I am the senior director of corporate compliance for a Fortune 500 company. It's a job that sounds boring, and mostly it is. But my entire career is built on a single, unwavering principle. Rules exist for a reason. I am the man who writes the code of conduct. I am the man who investigates violations of it, and I am the man who recommends termination for those who think the rules don't apply to them. My life is a fortress, built of policies, procedures, and the absolute certainty that actions have consequences. I met Megan 2 years ago at a company mixer. We work for the same massive tech firm, but in completely different divisions. She's in marketing, the department of flashy presentations and questionable expense reports. I'm in compliance, the department they whisper about in hushed tones. She was chaos, I was order. I found her fascinating. I saw her as a personal challenge, a system that was operating far outside of acceptable parameters. I genuinely thought I could be a positive influence, that I could guide her towards a more stable, more principled way of living. Our relationship wasn't a business arrangement. It was, in my mind, a rehabilitation project. I was blind to the fact that she didn't want to be rehabilitated. She just wanted a sponsor. I wasn't a simp. For 2 years, I set clear boundaries. I never merged our finances. The house we lived in was mine alone, purchased long before I met her. I didn't pay her bills. She had her own salary, and she was responsible for her own life. My contribution was providing a stable home and a partnership with a man who I thought was helping her grow. I was wrong. I wasn't helping her grow. I was just providing a secure base from which she could launch her own deceptive operations. The photo wasn't just a personal betrayal. It was a professional one. In sitting on her boss's lap, she wasn't just my fiancée being unfaithful. She was an employee in a subordinate position, engaging in a public display of inappropriate conduct with her direct superior. It was a clear, flagrant violation of at least 4 sections of the company's code of conduct. A code of conduct that I had personally written. She thought she was cheating on her fiancé. She had no idea she was cheating on the man who held her entire professional future in the palm of his hand. That night, after I had secured the evidence, I went into my home office. I opened a new encrypted file on my server. I labeled it Case File M. Jenkins A. Vance. Then I composed a new, anonymous email address. From that address, I drafted a formal ethics complaint. It was a work of art, cool, professional, and devastatingly precise. It cited the exact policies being violated: fraternization, conflict of interest, unprofessional conduct, and misuse of company resources. As I was fairly certain this team celebration would end up on Alex's expense report, I attached the photo as Exhibit A. And then I sent it directly to the one person at the company whose job it was to take this more seriously than anyone else: the head of human resources. The investigation had officially begun, and the primary suspects had no idea they were even being investigated. Update 1. The morning after I filed the complaint was a masterclass in strategic deception. Megan came home around 2 a.m., smelling of alcohol and cheap perfume. She tiptoed into the bedroom, thinking I was asleep. I was awake, of course, staring at the ceiling, my mind methodically gaming out the next 20 moves. In the morning, she was a little hungover, but otherwise her usual bubbly self. "Oh my God, last night was insane," she said, pouring herself a coffee. "We were at the office until midnight. Alex is such a slave driver." I just nodded, my face a mask of mild, husbandly sympathy. "Sounds tough," I said. "Make sure he expenses you a good lunch for all that overtime." This was the core of my strategy: absolute, unwavering normalcy. An investigation is most effective when the subjects are unaware they are being watched. I needed her to continue operating as usual. I needed her to keep making mistakes. The HR department at my company is a well-oiled, terrifying machine. They don't mess around. I knew my anonymous complaint, with its clear photographic evidence, would trigger an immediate, high-priority investigation. I also knew it would be handled with the utmost discretion at first. My job in compliance gives me a unique level of access and insight into the company's inner workings. I don't work directly with HR on these kinds of cases to avoid a conflict of interest, but I know the playbook. I knew they would start by quietly pulling records: email communications, instant messenger logs, expense reports, corporate travel records, even the logs from the keycard scanners at the office doors. They would build a case before they ever spoke to a single person. And I knew they would find more, because I had spent the last 6 months quietly observing a pattern of behavior that was, at best, deeply unprofessional. I hadn't acted on it because it was personal. Now it was no longer personal. It was a compliance issue. I had seen the late-night Uber receipts on our shared account, trips from the office to her apartment before she had moved in with me, all charged to Alex's corporate card. I had seen the restaurant bills from team lunches that were just for 2 people, at places far too romantic for a boss and his subordinate. I had even, on the one occasion I had used her laptop to print something, seen a string of instant messages from Alex that were so wildly inappropriate they would have made a sailor blush. I hadn't saved them then. It was a mistake I was about to rectify. My job now was to become a second, anonymous source. I needed to feed the HR investigation with the evidence they were looking for, without ever revealing my identity. That weekend, while Megan was out at brunch with her equally awful friends, I put the second phase of my plan into action. I went into our home office and booted up her personal laptop, which she never bothered to password protect. It took me less than 10 minutes to find what I was looking for. The chat logs with Alex were still there, a treasure trove of incriminating evidence. There were flirtatious comments, inside jokes, and most damningly, a series of conversations where he promised her a promotion she was not qualified for, in exchange for her loyalty. I took high-resolution photos of the screen with my phone. I didn't want to save the files directly, as that could leave a digital trail. The photos were clean, undeniable proof of a quid pro quo arrangement and an inappropriate relationship. This was no longer just about a drunken night at a bar. This was about a serious abuse of power by a senior manager. I also went through the shared photo album on our cloud account. Tucked away in a folder she thought I never looked at were more pictures from company events. Pictures where she and Alex were always standing a little too close, a little too familiar. I saved them all. I compiled this new evidence into a second dossier. I sent it from a different, anonymous email address, this time to the lead HR investigator, who I knew had been assigned to the case. The email was simple: "I am a colleague of Megan Jenkins. I am aware that an investigation is underway. Perhaps this will be helpful. I wished to remain anonymous for fear of retaliation. The trap was now baited with a feast of evidence. Megan and Alex thought they were dealing with a single blurry photograph. They had no idea I was about to drop an entire filing cabinet on their heads. The first sign that the investigation had escalated came the following Tuesday. Megan came home from work looking pale and shaken. "The weirdest thing happened today," she said, pouring herself a very large glass of wine. "HR called me into a meeting, and Alex too separately. They were asking all these strange questions. About our working relationship, about after-hours events, about expense reports. It was so intense. I put on my best concerned fiancé face. "That does sound weird," I said. "What's it about?" "I have no idea," she lied, her eyes darting away from mine. "Alex thinks someone might have a grudge against him and is trying to get him in trouble. We both just told them we have a great professional working relationship. It was all a big nothing." I just nodded. "I'm sure it is," I said. Lying to HR during a formal investigation. A fireable offense in its own right. The pieces were all falling into place more perfectly than I could have ever imagined. She had no idea she was confessing her own career suicide to me. She thought I was her safe harbor. I was the one who had sent the torpedo. Update 2. The week following the initial HR interviews was a beautiful, slow-motion car crash. Megan and Alex had made the single most fatal error a person can make in a corporate investigation. They had lied, and they had lied about the same things, which meant their stories were now locked in. They were standing on a trapdoor, holding hands, completely unaware that I was the one with my hand on the lever. The HR investigator, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Linda, now had their official on-the-record statements. Statements that claimed a purely professional relationship. Statements that I knew were about to be systematically dismantled by the evidence I had provided. The next move in the playbook would be a forensic audit of their corporate accounts, and this is where my own expertise came into play. I knew exactly what Linda would be looking for, and I decided to help her find it. On Wednesday, I sent a third and final anonymous email. This one was more technical. It pointed her towards specific dates and specific expense reports filed by Alex. It highlighted a dinner on a date when I knew Megan and I had been at a family function, meaning the team dinner Alex had expensed was with someone else. It flagged a hotel bill from a business trip to a city where the company had no clients, a trip I knew Megan had also been on for a friend's bachelorette party. This was the kill shot. It gave the investigation a precise roadmap to their deception. It was no longer just about flirtatious messages or a single inappropriate photo. It was now a clear pattern of them using company money to fund their affair. Megan's anxiety level throughout the week was a joy to behold. She was jumpy, irritable, and constantly on her phone texting Alex. She was trying to keep her story straight, trying to plug the leaks in a ship that was already halfway to the bottom of the ocean. She even had the audacity to complain to me about the stress. "This whole HR thing is a nightmare," she said one evening. "It's so distracting. I can't focus on my work, and Alex is being really weird about it." "You just have to tell the truth," I said, looking her straight in the eye. "As long as you're honest, you have nothing to worry about." That's what I always say in my compliance trainings. The look of panic that flickered across her face was priceless. The hammer finally fell on Friday. It was a beautiful, sunny afternoon. I was in my office, reviewing a new draft of our anti-corruption policy, when I got a company-wide email. It was a sterile, corporate announcement from the head of the marketing division. "We are writing to inform you that Alex Vance is no longer with the company, effective immediately. We wish him the best in his future endeavors." He had been fired unceremoniously. The phrase, "wish him the best in his future endeavors," is corporate speak for, he was fired for cause and we can't legally tell you the sordid details. I knew Megan's fate would be decided separately. I went home, made myself a drink, and waited. She walked in the door 2 hours later. Her face was ashen, her eyes were red. She was carrying a small cardboard box with the contents of her desk. She didn't say anything. She just walked to the couch and sat down, staring into the middle distance. "Rough day?" I asked, my voice dripping with fake sympathy. She finally looked at me. "They fired Alex," she whispered. "They called me in right after. They showed me everything: the photo, the chats, the expense reports, the hotel bill. She started to cry, quiet, defeated tears. They know we lied. They suspended me without pay pending final termination. I let the silence hang in the air for a long moment. I let her sit there, stewing in the wreckage of her own life. Then I walked over to the coffee table and placed a single, printed photograph on it, face up. It was the picture of her on Alex's lap. Her head snapped up. She stared at the photo, then at me. And in her eyes, I saw the final, horrifying pieces of the puzzle click into place. "It was you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "The anonymous complaint. It was you." I didn't say anything. I just took a slow sip of my drink. Final update. The confrontation in the living room was not the dramatic screaming match she probably expected. My revenge was never about being loud. It was about being right. "Why?" she asked, the tears now flowing freely. "Why would you do this to me?" I finally sat down in the chair opposite her. "Let me explain this to you in terms you might understand," I began, my voice as calm and steady as if I were conducting a disciplinary hearing. "You and I work for a company that has a code of conduct, a set of rules that we all agree to abide by. It's the foundation of our professional lives. It's what ensures a safe, fair, and ethical workplace." I leaned forward. "You didn't just cheat on me, Megan. You violated corporate policy. You engaged in an inappropriate relationship with your direct superior. You participated in a scheme to defraud the company by falsifying expense reports. And then, when questioned by human resources during a formal investigation, you lied. You committed perjury." She just stared at me, dumbfounded. She had never considered that her personal betrayal had a professional dimension. "I am the Senior Director of Corporate Compliance," I continued. "My entire job, my entire professional identity, is built on enforcing those rules. The rules you so casually and repeatedly broke. You complain about my job being boring, about me being too rigid. But that rigidity, that absolute adherence to the rules, is what keeps our company from falling apart. It's what I believe in." "So when I saw that photo," I said, tapping the picture on the table, "I didn't just see my fiancée on another man's lap. I saw a clear and present threat to the integrity of the system I am sworn to protect. I saw a compliance failure, and I did my job. I reported it just as any employee is obligated to do." "You destroyed my life over a rulebook," she sobbed. "No," I said, standing up. "You destroyed your life because you have no integrity. You thought you could live in a world without rules, without consequences. You thought you could have my stability at home while you broke the rules at work. You failed to understand that for a man like me, they are the same thing. My personal life and my professional life are governed by the same code of conduct. You violated both. The consequences are simply the system correcting itself." I walked to the front door and opened it. "Your employment at the company is over. Our engagement is over. Your residency in my house is over. I have packed a suitcase for you with a few days' worth of clothes. It's by the door. I will have the rest of your belongings professionally packed and sent to your parents' house by the end of the week." "Where am I supposed to go?" she cried. "That is a logistical problem that falls outside the scope of my department." I said, "Goodbye, Megan." I left her there, sitting on the couch, and went for a long walk. When I came back 2 hours later, she and her suitcase were gone. It's been a month now. The company finalized her termination. Alex, I heard, is unemployable in our industry. The story of his firing for having an affair with a subordinate and falsifying expense reports has spread like wildfire. Megan, as promised, had to move back in with her parents. Her career in tech is over. She has no money, no job, and a reputation that is in absolute tatters. My revenge wasn't a crime of passion. It was a compliance review. I took her blatant disregard for the rules of our relationship, and I held it up against the cold, hard, unforgiving rules of the world she thought she could conquer. She was audited, and she failed. Spectacularly. She thought she was just playing a game. She never understood that I was the one who wrote the rulebook. And the house always wins. My fiancée wrote in her bridesmaid's chat, "I'll say yes for now, but everyone knows I'll leave him eventually." She didn't notice I was in the thread. I just replied, "Make eventually today." Then I forwarded it to her parents who were paying for the wedding. It's funny how the universe works. You can spend years building something, laying every brick with care, and then discover the whole foundation is rotten because of one single misplaced text message. For me, that discovery came on a Tuesday night, a month before my wedding, in a group chat called Bride Tribe. Let me set the scene. I run a business that designs and installs custom home theaters and smart home systems. I like clean lines, good wiring, and things that work the way they're supposed to. My fiancée, Jessica, was supposed to be the final perfect component in the system of my life. Her parents, David and Mary, were footing the bill for our massive six-figure wedding. They were wealthy, old money types who saw this wedding not as a marriage, but as a merger, a social event to cap off their daughter's perfect, privileged life. I liked David and Mary. They were good, decent people who had welcomed me into their family. They were proud of my business, proud of the fact that I'd built something on my own. They were also footing the entire bill for this wedding, a fact they reminded me of with a gentle but constant pressure. Their only daughter was getting married, and they wanted it to be the event of the year. Jessica loved every second of it. She loved the dress fittings, the cake tastings, the endless meetings with the wedding planner. She loved being the center of attention. I was happy to let her have the spotlight. I was marrying her, not the wedding. So, about the group chat. A few months ago, Jessica's maid of honor, a girl named Lauren who I couldn't stand, created a group chat for the bridesmaids. It was for planning the bachelorette party, the bridal shower, all of it. For some reason, when Lauren was adding the bridesmaids to the chat, she must have mistyped a number. Instead of adding one of the bridesmaids, she had accidentally added me. My number was just one digit off from one of the other girls. It was a 1 in a million mistake. For months, I was a silent ghost in their chat. I'd get the notifications, hundreds of them a day, but I had the chat muted. I never looked at it. It was their space, full of talk about dresses and drama I had no interest in. I figured I'd just leave the group after the wedding. But on that Tuesday night, a single notification popped up on my phone's locked screen. A preview of a message that made my blood run cold. It was from Jessica. He just proposed the most ridiculously expensive honeymoon. I'll say yes for now, but everyone knows I'll leave him eventually. I stared at the screen, the words not quite making sense. It had to be a joke, right? Some weird, cynical bridal humor I wasn't supposed to see. I unlocked my phone and opened the chat for the first time. I scrolled up, my heart pounding a slow, heavy rhythm in my chest. And there it was. Not just one message, but months of them. A secret. Second life my fiancé was living right under my nose. Are you sure you want to go through with this? You could still call it off. And give up this wedding? Are you insane? My parents would kill me. Besides, it's not forever, it's just for now. Another bridesmaid named Olivia, but you don't love him. Love is a strong word. He's stable, he's reliable, he's comfortable. It's a good starter marriage. I'll give it a few years, let him pay off my student loans, and then I'll move on to someone more exciting. What about the house? You know he's planning on buying one after the wedding. Even better, a good divorce settlement will be the perfect down payment on a place of my own. I scrolled and scrolled through dozens, hundreds of messages. It was all there. A calculated, cold-blooded plan to use me, to use our marriage as a financial stepping stone. She was marrying me for the wedding, for the stability, and for the eventual divorce settlement. She was laughing about it with her friends, mocking my love for her, my commitment, my future plans. The woman I was about to promise my life to was a parasite, and her friends were her willing accomplices. I didn't feel anger. I felt a profound and chilling sense of detachment, as if I were a surgeon looking at a cancerous tumor on an X-ray. The diagnosis was clear. The only option was to cut it out completely and cleanly. I scrolled back down to her most recent message, the one about the honeymoon. Her friends were already replying with laughing emojis and encouraging comments. My fingers moved across the keyboard, my mind clear and sharp. I typed a single, simple reply into the chat, the first and only message I would ever send to the bride tribe. Make eventually today. Then I took a screenshot of the entire conversation, a long, scrolling record of her betrayal. I attached it to an email. I addressed it to two people, David and Mary, her parents. The people who were paying for this fraudulent wedding, The subject line was simple, a change of plans. I hit send, and then I started to pack. Update 1. The silence after I sent that message was the most profound I have ever experienced. It was the silence of a bomb having been dropped, the moment before the shockwave hits. For about 5 minutes, nothing happened. The group chat was quiet. My phone was quiet. Then the chaos began. The first reply in the group chat was from Lauren, the maid of honor. "Who is this? Is this a joke?" Then another bridesmaid. "OMG, is that his number? How is he in this chat?" Then a frantic series of messages from Jessica. "Mark, what are you talking about? How did you see that? You're not in this group. This is a huge misunderstanding. We were just joking around. Mark, call me right now." My phone started ringing. It was her. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again and again and again. While it was ringing, I got a new notification, an email reply from her father, David. It was one word: unacceptable. A minute later, my phone rang again. This time it was David. I answered. His voice was low and tight, like a wire stretched to its breaking point. "I'm looking at an email from you, Mark," he said. "Tell me this isn't real." "I'm afraid it is, David," I said, my voice calm. I was accidentally added to their group chat months ago. I never looked at it until tonight. What you're reading is just a small sample. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear a woman's voice in the background, muffled and distraught. It was Mary. "I'm on my way over," David said and hung up. While I waited for him, I continued my work. I went through our apartment, a place I had moved into a year ago, but which was leased in both our names, and I started to pack my things, not hers, mine, my clothes, my books, my work equipment. I was a surgeon, excising myself from a diseased body. Jessica was still calling, her calls now interspersed with frantic, pleading texts. "Please, baby, just talk to me. It's not what it looks like. I love you. You know I love you." My friends are terrible. They were just egging me on. I didn't mean any of it. The lies were so desperate, so transparent. It was almost pathetic. She wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was just terrified of the consequences. David arrived 20 minutes later. He looked like he had aged 10 years since I had last seen him. He walked into the apartment, looked at the half-packed boxes, and just shook his head. "I've already spoken to the wedding planner," he said, his voice heavy. "We're canceling everything. We'll lose the deposits, but I don't care. I will not pay for a fraud." We sat in silence for a few minutes. "I'm sorry, Mark," he finally said. "I had no idea. We raised her to be better than this." "I thought she was," I said. He told me he had called Jessica and told her to be at their house in an hour for a family meeting. He asked me if I would come. He said he understood if I didn't want to, but that he felt I deserved to be there, to face her with them. I agreed. The drive to their house was surreal. Jessica was still sending me a constant stream of texts, each one more desperate than the last. She was now blaming Lauren, claiming her friend had stolen her phone and sent the messages as a cruel prank. When I walked into their house, the scene was tense and quiet. Jessica was sitting on the couch, her face pale and tear-stained. Mary was on the other side of the room, her expression a mask of cold, controlled fury. Lauren, the maid of honor, was there too, apparently summoned to answer for her part in the deception. Jessica jumped up when she saw me. "Mark, thank God, tell them this is all a misunderstanding." I didn't even look at her. I looked at David. He was holding a printout of the email I had sent him, the screenshots of the chat laid out like evidence in a courtroom. "Jessica," David said, his voice booming through the silent house. "I have 2 questions for you. Did you write these messages? And do you love this man?" She looked at me, then at her father, her eyes darting around like a cornered animal. We were just joking," she stammered. "It was just girl talk." "That is not what I asked," David's voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Did you write these messages?" She finally broke. A sob escaped her lips. "Yes," she whispered. "And do you love him?" She just stood there, silent, the tears streaming down her face. The silence was her answer. Mary, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke, her voice shaking with rage. "Get out," she said, looking at Lauren. "Get out of my house. And you," she said, turning to Jessica, "pack a bag. You are no longer welcome here. You have humiliated this family in a way I never thought possible." Update 2. The explosion I had set off was not a single contained blast. It was a cluster bomb, sending shrapnel flying in every direction, tearing through the carefully curated world of my ex-fiancée and her family. The scene at her parents' house was just the beginning. After Mary kicked her out, Jessica had a full-blown meltdown. She refused to leave, screaming that it was her home, that they couldn't do this to her. It was Lauren, the now ex-maid of honor, who finally managed to get her out of the house. The wedding, of course, was canceled. But David and Mary did something I never expected. The following day, they sent out an email to every single person on the guest list. It was a formal, brutally honest announcement. It is with the deepest regret that we announce the cancellation of the wedding between our daughter, Jessica, and Mark. This decision has been made due to the discovery of a profound and unforgivable betrayal on our daughter's part. We apologize for any inconvenience this may cause. We also wish to extend our deepest, most sincere apologies to Mark, a man who has shown our family nothing but kindness and respect, and who deserved so much better than the deceit he was shown. They didn't just cancel the wedding, they publicly disowned their daughter's actions and exonerated me completely. They chose integrity over saving face. It was an act of character I never would have expected, and it cemented my respect for them, even as I was extricating myself from their family. The financial fallout was swift. David was true to his word. He and his lawyers went through every vendor contract with a fine-tooth comb. They managed to recoup some of the deposits, but the losses were still substantial. As for me, I was in the clear. I hadn't spent a dime on the wedding itself. The apartment, however, was another matter. The lease was in both our names. I had no intention of living there, a place now tainted with the memory of her lies. I also had no intention of making it easy for her. I moved the rest of my things out and into a new apartment across town the day after our breakup. Then I did something my lawyer advised against, but which felt deeply, primally necessary. I went to the apartment one last time. Jessica was there, packing her things, her face a mess of tears and rage. She started screaming at me the moment I walked in, blaming me for ruining her life. I didn't say a word. I just walked into the kitchen, took a can of black spray paint from a bag, and painted a single large X on every single wall of the apartment. On the living room wall, I wrote the words that had started it all. "It's just for now." Then I walked out, leaving her standing in the ruins of our shared life. I immediately called the landlord, explained that my ex-fiancée and I had broken up, and that I would not be contesting the loss of our security deposit due to the redecorating. I gave him her number and told him she was now his sole point of contact. Jessica, I learned later, had to pay not only to have the entire apartment repainted, but also had to cover the remaining months of the lease herself, as I had made it clear I would not be contributing another cent. Her life, in the months that followed, was a slow, painful unraveling. Kicked out by her parents, she was forced to move in with Lauren. That arrangement lasted less than a month. The two of them, stripped of the wedding that had been the center of their social lives, apparently turned on each other with a vengeance. She had to get a job, a real one, for the first time in her adult life. She was working as a hostess at a restaurant, a humbling, and for her, humiliating fall from grace. Her parents, while still paying for some of her bills, had effectively cut her out of their lives. They were ashamed of her, and they didn't bother to hide it. Final update. It's been a year. I'm sitting in the living room of the house I just bought, a beautiful place with a big yard and a workshop where I can finally build the furniture I've always dreamed of making. My business is thriving. My life is quiet, stable, and entirely my own. I've maintained a cordial relationship with David and Mary. We've had dinner a few times. They are still deeply ashamed of what their daughter did, and they have treated me with a kindness and respect that is almost heartbreaking. They see me, I think, as the son they wish they had had. A few months ago, David called me. He told me they were selling their large family home and downsizing. The scandal, he admitted, had taken a toll on their social lives and they just wanted a fresh start. He asked if I would be interested in buying some of their furniture, as he knew I was still furnishing my new house. I went over to their house the following weekend. It was a sad, hollowed-out place, full of boxes and memories. As David was showing me a beautiful antique desk, Mary came into the room. She told me Jessica was there, in her old bedroom, packing up the last of her childhood things. She asked if I would be willing to just see her. For a moment, I didn't want to. But I saw the pleading in Mary's eyes, and I agreed. I walked up the stairs and knocked on the door of her old room. She opened it. The confident, radiant woman I had almost married was gone. She was thin, pale, and her eyes were empty. "Mark," she whispered. We just stood there for a moment, two strangers who had once promised each other forever. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely audible. "For everything." It was the first time I had ever heard her say those words without a hint of manipulation, without any agenda other than the simple, painful truth. I just nodded. "I know," I said. And that was it. There was no grand confrontation, no final, satisfying speech, just a quiet, sad acknowledgement of the ruins she had made of her own life.